Welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm your host, and I'm really excited to get into today's topic.
And I'm your expert for today. We have a genuinely fascinating piece of source material to explore with you all.
We really do. We are looking at a recorded observation from Tommy Yoshida, who is known as Tommy Yoshida in Japan.
Right.
And we've got an excerpt from his reflection titled AI as a Transitional Phase.
To set the baseline for what we're doing here, Yoshida's own framework is highly specific, and we really need to adhere to it. The goal today is not to evaluate AI performance or benchmark some new system.
Yeah, we aren't doing a product review here.
Exactly. We are not discussing how to prompt better, we aren't optimizing your workflow, and we are intentionally avoiding any concrete, definitive conclusions.
Which is kind of refreshing, honestly.
It is. The objective is simply to examine the unfiltered experience of living alongside a technology that is fundamentally shifting its shape.
So we are framing this deep dive around the concepts of unfinished thoughts and paused questions. We're looking at an era defined by transition.
And there was a specific detail right at the beginning of the text regarding language that really sets the tone for this whole thing.
Oh, right, the part about the English phrasing.
Yes. The source explicitly notes that parts of Yoshida's reflection purposefully preserve unnatural or uncomfortable English phrasing.
Which, when you first read it, you kind of want to correct it in your head.
You do. But the linguistic friction is kept intact on purpose. It's there to observe how human judgment, language, and technology sort of collide during periods of rapid change.
Because when a massive technological paradigm shifts, the vocabulary we use to describe it usually lags, decades behind?
Easily decades behind. We end up using these clunky, borrowed metaphors to describe entirely unprecedented digital phenomena. Preserving that awkward phrasing is a deliberate act of documentation.
It forces you to slow down as a reader. Like when you encounter a sentence that feels syntactically strange, you can't just skim past it. You have to pause.
You have to process the actual mechanics of the thought.
Exactly. Smoothing out the grammar into perfect, polished prose would kind of erase the very real confusion of the current technological moment.
We are constantly trying to force AI interactions into human conversational templates.
And the language breaks down because the interaction isn't actually human.
That lack of a native vocabulary for these digital artifacts is a core theme here. If we immediately translate an unprecedented digital event into standard terminology, we trick ourselves into thinking we fully understand it.
We make it too comfortable.
Right. By leaving the English slightly broken or unnatural, Yoshida mirrors the evolving, sometimes broken nature of the system he's observing. The medium becomes the message. We are forced to sit with the discomfort of the undefined.
Let's move into the actual digital observation recorded in the text, because it starts in a highly relatable setting.
A very normal morning.
Totally normal. Imagine this for yourself. Yoshida wakes up around 8 o'clock, opens his computer, and looks at his ChatGPT interface.
He had left the browser window open the night before when he went to sleep.
Right, so he's just waking up, checking the screen, and upon looking at the interface, specifically checking the upper left area of the screen, he notices a comment-like message.
And the crucial detail here is that this message appears to have been posted from his own account.
Okay, let's unpack this. He is looking at a text input attributed to him, but he has absolutely zero memory of ever writing it.
It's an artifact of his digital identity acting asynchronously while he was offline.
And the system had already generated a response to it.
That's the wild part. There is a complete, albeit short, exchange just sitting on the screen. A prompt seemingly from his account and a completion from the machine.
Just imagine that feeling. You're looking at a screen and seeing your account engaged in a dialogue you didn't initiate.
It is a deeply jarring user experience. The system state has progressed without the user's conscious input.
Because in a standard setup, you expect a strict request and response cycle, right? Initiated by the human. You click a button, the server responds. When that cycle appears to trigger itself, it fractures that fundamental illusion of control we have over our personal machines.
You open your laptop and see your account has populated a conversational thread on its own.
From a technical standpoint, we know modern web applications involve complex session management, cross-device syncing, background token refreshes.
A delayed sync from another device, maybe?
Or a fragmented session state. Those could theoretically manifest as a phantom input appearing upon wake.
But the subjective experience of the user doesn't immediately jump to analyzing session token architecture.
No, not at all. The subjective experience is a sudden, stark disconnect between your own memory and the system's log.
And the immediate instinct for most users encountering this kind of desynchronization is aggressive intervention.
You want to fix it immediately. The typical response is to refresh the page repeatedly, check your account security settings, maybe delete the anomalous thread to clean up the workspace.
Or attempt to force the system to explain the error through a support ticket. Right. The human drive is to sanitize the environment and restore the expected logical order.
But Yoshida doesn't do any of that. He suppresses the urge to troubleshoot or clean up the interface.
He simply observes the anomaly and decides to record it.
He transitions from a user trying to accomplish a daily task to an observer documenting a localized software event.
He recognizes the value of the raw artifact. Before altering the state of the machine by refreshing or deleting, he moves to preserve the visual evidence.
Here is where it gets really interesting, because the methodology he uses to capture the event introduces a completely new layer of complexity.
It really does.
Yoshida attempts to take a screenshot using a browser extension he frequently relies on called FireShot.
A pretty standard tool.
Yeah. He clicks the extension and selects a specific area of the screen containing the Phantom Exchange.
And as he initiates the capture selection, the interface reacts unexpectedly.
There is a small indicator on the screen labeled ChatGPT Auto, positioned near the upper left corner.
And the moment Yoshida begins dragging the FireShot selection box, that specific ChatGPT auto indicator suddenly disappears from the screen.
Poof, just gone. He assumes it must be a momentary glitch or a slip of the mouse, so he sets up the capture area a second time.
And the exact same behavior occurs.
The physical act of selecting the area causes the ChatGPT auto indicator to vanish.
The tool being used to observe the interface is actively altering the interface it is trying to capture.
What's fascinating here is how clearly this demonstrates the observer effect in software engineering.
Absolutely. In computer science, specifically in debugging, there is a concept often referred to as a Heisenbug.
Like Heisenberg's uncertainty principle.
Exactly. It's a software bug that seems to disappear or alter its behavior when you try to study or isolate it. When you attach a debugger to a program or inject a monitoring script, you inherently change the environment.
You alter the execution timing or the memory allocation.
Or just the sequence of operations.
And browser extensions are notorious for this kind of interference. Tools like FireShot don't just take a passive optical picture of the screen like a camera would.
No, they often inject their own JavaScript right into the document object model, the DOM, to calculate coordinates, render their selection boxes, and capture the render tree.
And modern web applications like ChatGPT are incredibly dynamic. They are built on reactive frameworks that constantly monitor the DOM for any changes.
The application is likely running event listeners that detect shifts in window focus, mouse movements, or external DOM mutations.
So when the screenshot extension injects its selection overlay, it triggers a reactive state change in the web application's front-end architecture.
The disappearing ChatGPT Auto button isn't a ghost in the machine. It is a collision between two pieces of dynamic software fighting for control of the same visual environment.
It is the digital equivalent of trying to measure the exact temperature of a microscopic droplet of water using a massive cold thermometer.
Right. The act of inserting the thermometer changes the temperature you were trying to measure.
Recognizing this collision, Yoshida pivots. He abandons the browser extension entirely and simply uses the print screen key on his physical keyboard.
Which is a brilliant workaround. By relying on an operating system level command rather than a browser level extension, he bypasses the DOM manipulation entirely.
The OS simply reads the frame buffer of the display hardware, completely agnostic to the web code running underneath.
And this method works perfectly. The ChatGPT auto indicator remains visible, and he captures the full display, the phantom comment, the machine's reply, and the unstable UI element all in one frame.
This methodical shift highlights a crucial difference between sterile laboratory testing and wild observation.
In a controlled QA environment, engineers isolate variables to reproduce bugs.
But in daily use, variables compound unpredictably. Browser extensions, lingering cache states, background OS processes, overlapping network requests.
They create an incredibly messy, volatile ecosystem. Documenting this organic friction is often far more revealing than reading a polished white paper on system capabilities.
Because white papers describe how a system is theoretically supposed to function under ideal controlled conditions.
Yoshida's approach documents how the system actually degrades, hesitates, and interacts within a complex, uncontrolled user environment. It shifts the analytical focus from theoretical capacity to tangible reality.
So having secured the visual evidence via the OS-level print screen, Yoshida drafts a report to OpenAI.
And the construction of this report is a masterclass in objective restraint,
It really is. He includes absolutely zero speculation.
which goes against every instinct we have. The human tendency toward narrative is remarkably strong. When faced with an anomaly, especially a slightly eerie one like a phantom message, the instinct is to fill the informational void with a story,
A standard user might write to support, claiming they were definitively hacked.
or speculating that the AI model is acting eponymously, or complaining that a specific recent update broke their workflow.
But Yoshida strips all of that subjective narrative away. He details the text attributed to his account, which he did not write. He details the generated response.
And he details the vanishing UI element during the initial fireshot capture attempt.
He acts purely as a sensor, relaying the sequence of visual events without attaching a definitive causal theory.
This objective reporting is vital when dealing with complex, non-deterministic systems. When a user sends a narrative-heavy bug report, support engineers often have to spend more time untangling the user's assumptions and emotional reactions than investigating the actual software state.
By providing only the verifiable sequence of events, Yoshida offers clean, usable data.
So he sends the objective report and eventually receives a reply.
But it is an automated message from OpenAI.
Right. The communication simply states there was an active incident affecting the conversation system in ChatGPT at that time, which could cause unusual UI or history behavior.
We have a highly specific localized anomaly, the phantom comment and the disappearing button, met with a broad, systemic explanation.
The automated response functions as a corporate catch-all. It acknowledges instability within a major subsystem but doesn't, and likely cannot, diagnose the individual user's precise sequence of events.
So, what does this all mean? We have a user experiencing a localized disruption and a vendor confirming a generalized incident. Does the automated message actually solve the mystery of the phantom comment?
Yoshida openly admits it remains entirely unclear. The correlation is obvious. A known system incident was occurring concurrently with his strange UI behavior.
However, definitive causation is impossible to prove from his vantage point.
He cannot conclusively state that the broad conversations incident is the direct mechanical cause of the disappearing ChatGPT auto-indicator or the asynchronous message.
The backend architecture remains a black box to the end user.
But the lack of definitive closure is actually the focal point of the reflection. The resolution of the support ticket isn't the valuable part of the exercise.
The valuable part is the existence of the record itself. The trace of the interaction was successfully captured.
This requires a shift in how we categorize unexpected machine behavior. The default vocabulary we use, words like error, bug, glitch, or crash, carries a heavy implication of structural failure.
It implies a binary state. The tool is either working perfectly according to design, or it is broken and requires immediate fixing.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Yoshida proposes a nuanced alternative to that binary. He reframes these anomalies not as definitive errors, but as a small sense of hesitation.
A small sense of hesitation. That is a profound semantic shift.
It is. An error is a dead end. A hesitation is a temporary pause in an ongoing process. It suggests a system that is actively attempting to resolve a complex state, rather than one that has simply collapsed.
Calling it a hesitation radically alters the user's relationship with the software.
It moves the user from a stance of frustration to a stance of observation.
But there is a valid practical counterargument we have to consider here. If you are relying on a software system for structural engineering calculations or financial modeling or medical diagnostics,
A hesitation that produces a phantom output or an invisible UI element is functionally indistinguishable from a critical failure.
right, isn't there an inherent danger in being too forgiving of unpredictable system behavior? We build digital infrastructure specifically to be deterministic and reliable.
That tension is precisely why this observation is so relevant to the current moment. We are currently forcing probabilistic, generative AI models into legacy workflows that demand rigid, deterministic calculators.
The danger arises when we expect a transitional, constantly evolving neural network to possess the static stability of a traditional relational database.
Yoshida isn't suggesting we deploy hesitating systems in life or death scenarios. He is pointing out that in the broader landscape of daily digital interaction, our expectation of flawless, invisible execution is fundamentally misaligned with the current reality of the technology.
Because the technology is in a transitional phase, it is unfinished by definition.
By labeling every unexpected output or UI quirk a critical failure, we create a constant state of user friction and frustration.
By recognizing it as a hesitation, we acknowledge the reality of the evolving tool we are actually using. It invites a necessary pause.
A phantom comment on a screen forces you to stop and critically examine the digital artifact. It prevents the technology from fading entirely into the background of your routine.
In modern software design, there is a massive push to make interfaces entirely frictionless. But friction is how we know something is actually there.
The hesitation is the friction. It reminds the user that they are interacting with a complex, opaque, and rapidly iterating system, not a simple, static utility.
It is a reminder to maintain an analytical distance. The core philosophy of the text is that we should focus our energy on leaving records.
In an era where software models update weekly and interface paradigms shift without warning, rushing to concrete conclusions is often a wasted effort.
The definitive conclusion you reach about a system today might be entirely invalidated by a back-end patch deployed tomorrow.
That aligns with the broader methodology perfectly. The imperative is documentation over immediate resolution. The value lies in tracking the trajectory of the transition itself.
Recording the traces of a phantom conversation, noting the disappearing button, saving the unedited screenshot.
Those actions build a historical ledger of how the technology behaved during its awkward evolutionary middle stage.
Let's review the arc of this observation. It starts with the jarring morning discovery of a phantom comment generated by a dormant account.
It moves through the methodical attempt to capture the moment, highlighting how our own diagnostic tools, like browser extensions, can actively interfere with the dynamic web environments they are trying to monitor.
And we observe the deliberate pivot to a basic OS-level screenshot to bypass that software observer effect.
We then looked at the rigorous discipline required to report the event purely objectively, resisting the deeply human urge to weave a speculative narrative around an anomaly.
This objective report was met with the broad, ambiguous automated response from the vendor, highlighting the opacity of modern platforms.
Finally, we unpacked the semantic shift from categorizing these events as rigid errors to viewing them as hesitations within a transitional technology.
It fundamentally changes the user framework from demanding constant perfection to observing ongoing evolution.
You don't have to resolve every digital anomaly. Simply noting the friction and documenting the awkwardness of the current moment is a valid and highly necessary form of engagement.
It is a highly practical mindset for navigating a volatile digital landscape. Document the traces, acknowledge the transitional state of the tools, and maintain your capacity for objective observation without rushing to judgment.
Which leaves us with a final consideration.
Yes, we have spent this deep dive exploring AI as a transitional phase. We've discussed intentionally preserving uncomfortable, clunky language to match the shifting environment.
And we've analyzed the discipline of observing system hesitations without immediately demanding a fix.
But if we are deliberately modifying our language, adjusting our expectations, and changing our observational methodologies to accommodate these evolving networks,
Are we as humans entering a transitional phase of our own cognition?
are our analytical frameworks and problem-solving instincts quietly being rewired by the very digital hesitations we're merely attempting to document?
That is a massive question. It raises an important point regarding who is actually adapting to whom in this ecosystem.
Definitely something for you to consider the next time your interface pauses, a button vanishes, or a system behaves in a way you can't quite explain. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.